Thank you for tuning in to Stories in Your Hands with Cynthia Clark, the podcast about creating the life you want, regardless of your story. This podcast is sponsored by loveinyourhands.com, the place to go to find long lasting love using the most innovative and accurate algorithm based in scientific palmistry. Tired of superficial connections? Start your free Soulmate Connection membership today at loveinyourhands.com. Now here's your host, Cynthia Clark, palm reading consultant and compatibility expert. Hi there, everyone. This is Cynthia Clark, and I'm very excited that you are all here today. I'm really interested in our topic for today. And I want to start with a little lesson in palmistry. And I want to talk about there's a challenge line in your hands called the Mercury challenge line. And when you have this line, it's an indication that it's something that you are struggling with and it's something that wants to heal within you. And the Mercury challenge line is located, so if you look at your hand, it's going to head from inside your Venus mount or your Mars mount, which is inside of your lifeline. And it's going to head sort of at a diagonal towards your little finger. That's why it's called a Mercury challenge line, because that is your Mercury finger. Okay, now if it runs all the way over there, that is how you identify a Mercury challenge line. Now, by the way, all lines in the hand do change. So you may have one on one hand and not on the other, or you may have it on both, or one may be fading out, one may be fading in. That's kind of the neat thing about lines, is they show us what's reflecting back to us in the present time. So the Mercury challenge line has to do with struggling in issues of trust and intimacy. So if you have this line, it means that you don't trust, you have trouble trusting, and in my opinion, that will keep you from actually living in your grace, which is our topic for today. So just take a look at that in your own hands and see if you have this challenge marker, because your hands really are trying to reflect back to you what it is that you're either working on, or it's showing you opportunities of where you can grow in your life. So I like to just throw out a little lesson for everybody to kind of start to think about their hands in a different way so that they can learn and grow. So I'm excited to bring on our very special guest today. We have Marita Rollenbeck, and she and I actually met, it's been over a year now. It's actually been quite a while, I think. So we had a really strong connection, and I definitely felt like I was interested in her work, and I am pretty sure she's somewhat interested in my work. And so that's why we're connected, and I've sort of been following her journey. And she's got this amazing new book called Living with Grace. And she is an expert in sacred leadership, which is to me just like, oh, sounds so wonderful and fascinating, and something we can all tap into her wisdom with. So thank you, Marita, for coming onto the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Cynthia. I'm very excited to spend time with you today. And yes, I am intrigued by your work.
Okay,
I looked at my hand and I didn't see one of those lines.
well, that's good. Yeah, you must be living it then.
Yeah, well, I think with all the stuff I've gone through, I kind of deserve having. Yeah, I went over that bridge,
Yeah.
and maybe it was there and it's gone. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's very possible. I mean, that's kind of the neat thing about, especially minor lines, like challenge lines. They do ebb and flow with our just our lives in general, but how we react to our lives. So yeah,
Mhm.
so it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how you ended up writing this book.
Ooh. I ended up writing the book because when Grace, okay, what you have to know as a listener is that Grace was the name of my cat.
Mm-hmm.
So the book has multiple layers of meaning woven throughout it. And her name was Grace. And as she was very sick, my way of coping from how did it go from that to that, like too quick, I started writing as a way to process. And I kept hearing, we're going to write a book, we're going to write a book. And I'm like, I don't know how to write a book, but I'll keep writing. So and then it just became stronger. And like the closer she came to death, the stronger this came up. And it was really just me continuing the writing and showing up, if you will, just keep going to that blank page and writing. And and then I found myself actually channeling her. We would start, I don't know how to, I'm like, I literally did not know how to do this.
Hmm.
So I started with um a deck of oracle cards, and I would pull a card, and that was the springboard, if you will, into that day's writing. So I had to have some kind of a cheat, right? I had to have some kind of a prompt, and
Hmm.
that was the card. And it was just so fascinating to um, pull the card and what came through. And then the next day it was like, wow, it was profound how it all came together. So that's how I started the writing of the book, even though I had no idea that I would literally go write a book.
Right. You weren't really planning on it.
I didn't know how to plan on it. It's just,
Right.
I'm just trying to get through each day. It was literally that.
Yeah. And you have kind of an interesting background too, because you've had some challenges over the years.
Oh, yeah.
So, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I could absolutely. I think the biggest challenge I've had, I'd like to say was, but it still is a challenge, is my brain injury. And the my life became one of literally getting through the day. Like, what can I do today to make it through the day? And my weeks were filled, like a 5-day work week, Monday through Friday was probably filled with 3 or 4 medical appointments for a very long time. That was my job. My job was to get well. And when I say medical, I throw everything in there. I mean, once I was through what the medical community could do for me, then it was all about the metaphysical. What can the metaphysical community do for me? And
How did the injury come about?
I fell on concrete, and concussion here and concussion back here.
Mm.
And just today I saw my cranial sacral myofascial lady, and she's still working on deep in the brain right here. I mean, it's 5.5 years.
Wow.
So that's like the biggest challenge, but that definitely taught me grace, and it taught me now.
Mm-hmm.
It taught me how to be, because with the injury, I could not be on screen.
Mm-hmm.
I could not have music. I could not, if I can't be on screen, that means I can't do YouTube. I mean, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't read and comprehend what I'd read.
Yeah.
So I literally would joke and say I changed chairs for a different view. And I wasn't kidding. It was like, okay, I think I'll look at that painting.
Mm.
And people are like, kind of like you, but it was true. And I changed chairs for a different view. And that kind of life or lifestyle. I mean, I didn't have to go to the top of a mountain and learn how to meditate. I mean, it's how I lived for a very long time.
So
And
what
the interest,
I was
go ahead.
gonna say, what was going on in your life at the time when you had the accident? Were you going through any kind of challenge, or um, how was your life back then?
It was very, I thought it was very on task. I had just finished writing, or completing, I should say, a very exciting program that I offer called Nourish Your Way Home, a delicious journey toward God and food. It was all ready to go.
Hmm.
And like I had it all ready. And then 1 or 2 days later, my daughter and I went on a road trip, and 12 hours later, I was hurt.
Mm.
And we were we were a long way from home. And so I was an hour away from a hospital. So I had an hour ride in an ambulance.
Oof, yikes.
And so now we were even further away from home. And so we were really far away. And they did not diagnose me with a head injury. When people see blood, that's what gets the attention. These injuries that we can't see,
Right.
we don't get we don't acknowledge that really. I do remember that. I don't remember it happening, but my daughter said that she was instructed to watch me overnight. So that's a clue, that
Uh-huh.
something may have been wrong, but I wasn't diagnosed with a concussion for like 2.5 weeks. And that's a very long time.
Wow, that is a huge amount of time.
Yeah, very, very long time. And so anyway, I didn't know how sick I was, but I just knew that the objective actually was to go. We were driving from Minneapolis, where I live, down to Salt Lake City, where there was a Young Living Convention, the 20th year
Mm.
anniversary. And we were going to do a road trip, and then she was going to fly home. And of course I was going to stay for the convention.
Mm.
So that was the whole idea. But so that next morning we got up, had breakfast, and turned around and came home. But it was too much for me anyway to do it in one trip.
Yeah.
So we had an overnight. I think we were in Sioux Falls or something like that. So
Mm.
that was what I was up to, and then when I came home, I was going to launch this program, which,
Mm.
you know, but then nothing mattered except me not feeling like I was drunk all the time, you know?
Mm. Yeah, that kind of reminds me when I had vertigo for 9 months after my divorce.
Mm.
So yeah, it's amazing how an illness or an injury can just completely like put you out of commission.
Well, and it shows you what's important.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Exactly.
cleaning the kitchen doesn't matter.
Right.
It's just like nothing else matters. The
Mm.
intriguing thing, bringing this back to Grace, the cat, was that she also had a head injury,
Mm.
and yet she never thought of that as like our commonality. Um, but it's fascinating how we would end up with one another, right?
Yeah, for sure. Our
What's the probability of that? I don't know, but
I think our animals reflect all sorts of things to us. It's amazing what they do.
yeah, yeah. And she was because of her trauma, she had a hard time trusting. And it was very frustrating for me. It's like, I'm opening up my home for you, and you won't let me hold you, all this stuff, right? I mean, totally taking it personally. But by the end, when she was so sick and in all likelihood so much pain,
Hmm.
then I could hold her and I could literally feel her like sink into me.
Mm.
And when she allowed that, that was that relinquishment. That was like the equivalent of my being okay with changing chairs and being okay with the view, right?
Right.
Um, that was her thing. She needed to come. You mentioned trust. She needed to come to the trust. I mean, she couldn't even trust um being in her own body. She
Mm.
said, I never have chosen bodies that last long. Never. This is the longest I've ever been in a body. And I'm like, really? Because she was not even 3. I mean, I mean, really? That's why this death was so hard, is because she wasn't 16 or 20 years old. She
Right.
was she was just a kid. She was just a baby.
Yeah, a lot of cats live a lot longer.
Right. A friend of mine just put down their cat. She was like almost 21. And
Mm.
she kept going, but she could her little footsteps were like, they were like this. I mean, like a 100-year-old lady, you know what I mean? Just tiny, tiny.
Right.
And she was clearly in pain too, but she'd have hung around for mom and dad,
Yeah.
but that would be selfish, right?
Right.
So
Interesting.
yeah.
So yeah, so this whole concept of living with grace is this, tell us a little bit about that.
About living with grace.
Yeah, yeah. Like if we want to live with more grace, what are some things that we can do?
Well, there are things that we don't really want to do, like looking, I'm going to say it, we're looking at our own shit. Um, really looking hard at what needs to be let go, what needs to be forgiven. Um, how important is it for you to be right?
Mm-hmm.
What is it really worth it? Like I said, I was talking to some friends months back, and I said, it comes where there's conflict. Not we weren't in conflict, but we were talking about conflict,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, it gets to a point where you just need to move on and forgive. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't, I mean, there are people who are so stubborn and they have to be right. And I'm not saying make them right, but I am saying have the courage to just walk away and be done with that relationship. Because if being right is more important than being my friend, well, that something's wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's no grace there.
Exactly.
So um in the book, we've got a whole section called Journey to Grace, and it's kind of like the stages of grief, and it's not like a recipe. I'm giving you a recipe of how to get to grace, because in my mind, as I wrote the book and put them in the right order, it was just because that's how our minds want things, right? We tend to have this little file cabinet where things need to be in the right order.
Yeah.
But it's a very winding, circular, messy thing.
Mm-hmm.
Letting go, you can let go of something to the level of understanding that you're at. And then as you progress and you raise your vibration, because actually everything is energy, right? So, and
Yeah.
as your vibration increases, well, then, oh God, there's a little bit more forgiveness that we could talk about, or we could look at, or we could let go and forgive that. But before, you didn't see it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's not like you're going to go through the sequence of things and then you're going to be at grace. you'll
Mm-hmm.
be at you'll achieve the grace, and then, oh goody, you get to do it again at a higher level.
Yeah.
But you start to embody the grace, you start to animate with
Mm-hmm.
that energy and that vibrancy. So it's not all doom and gloom and ugly and mucky, you know what I mean?
Right, right. Yeah, I try to teach people this too all the time, including myself. is that, yeah, we all have stuff that we're dealing with. I mean, that's why we're here,
I was just going to say that. Exactly.
why we're
That's why
here,
we're here.
why we're here on Earth. And that's why they reflect through the hands, the different challenges.
Hmm.
And there's nobody on the planet that doesn't have challenges. I mean, yeah, everybody does.
Right.
And it doesn't mean we have to be, you know, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with us, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we're not wrong or, you know, you know what I mean. So,
Well, like you said, it's why we're here. We might question, why on earth did I decide to come to Earth?
right.
Believe me, I've asked that a lot, and I'm sure you have. Um,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
but it's true. It's like if we're still here, it's because we're not done.
No, we're not. Definitely not done.
Yeah.
And so do you recommend that people, well, not only do they have to be willing to look at their stuff, but I feel like sometimes people really struggle with identifying what it is. So,
Yes, there's
well,
a lot of truth to that. Yeah,
yeah,
there's a lot of truth to that. And it's because we're like this,
yeah,
it's like in our face, so close, we can't see, we have no perspective.
right.
And when, like, for instance, when I'm working with people, I think the key is to be able to ask the right kind of questions to get people thinking in a way that it may not be obvious.
Mhm.
And yet when it's kind of like a different perspective, we're like, well, look around the corner, just that little bit of movement in how they look at something gives them a complete, oh, of
Mhm.
course, that kind of a thing. So
Right.
that clean perspective, the inquiry, I call it self-inquiry, right?
Mhm.
Just, well, why is that? Or why did I just do that? Do I really want that?
Mhm.
That kind of a thing is just, and then having someone who's not emotionally entangled. Like, if I don't know the history of all these people, I'm just looking at the energy of it,
Mhm. Right.
and I'm picking up on the energetics of it. And I'm not biased to any kind of relationship. That's why it's easier to kind of share with people that you don't know, because it's
I
just,
agree. Yes.
it's just really authentic.
Yeah. Yeah. I always recommend people go to another caring professional to get some new perspectives because,
Mhm.
yeah, we oftentimes are so stuck in that junk. And just the whole nature of thoughts and how they repeat themselves every single day. And we have, we have our patterns, right? And we create
Yes.
patterns from a very early age. And we're not even aware of those patterns.
Well, we
So,
don't even know that it's a pattern.
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's even before that. It's even like, oh, it's kind of like growing up the way, however you grew up and you thought it was normal. And then you find out, oh, not everybody lives like this. In
Exactly.
whatever it is. Like, I had a friend I remember in grade school, their family was very religious, and they always had Sunday, like, dinner at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, that was weird. That was not like that's not what we did. you know, you know, but it's not that it was like undesirable. It was just so different.
Sure.
My parents were immigrants from Germany, and Sunday afternoons were coffee time, coffee and cake and company.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, that's what I grew up with. So,
Sweet.
like, why would I know that people have Sunday dinner at 4 o'clock? I
Mhm.
wouldn't know that, right?
Right. So tell us a little bit more about the book. Are there any little like tidbits you want to share?
Well, no, because
Okay.
I don't want to share like what's in the book, but I will say that it's, I think when your listeners actually go buy the book and read it or listen to it or eat whatever, and when they enjoy the book, it's very multi-layered with the wisdom. It's it's the physical cat Grace and what that was all about, how I supported her, how she responded. I tell you, she always had to go to the doctor in a blizzard. It's just like, really? This is the kind of weather I'd stay home in, and you want me to go out to the doctor? So, just things like that. So there's the cat, right? And there's the realness of that. But then there's also the wise one, the wise soul that was Grace, that I still call Grace. And then there is so much, another layer of wisdom of, like I said, like the journey to Grace. So let's make it practical. It's not just a story about a cat and the end of her life, right? It's how can her journey, how can our journey support you? And so the tidbit that I'll give you is that I didn't want it to just be the story and the wisdom. I actually she's like, that was me. Grace is giving you as a reader the opportunity to do self-inquiry. So every chapter, we talk about whatever the chapter talks about, right? Yeah. And then it's like, well, now it's your turn. We just talked about ABC. Now let's reflect on that. And how does that make you feel? Or can you relate? Or what went through your mind and your heart and your body when you read that? And then actually there's a page dedicated where you could actually write with Grace.
That sounds like so much fun.
Yeah.
It sounds like an interactive book. And
well, yeah. And Grace was all about, she corrects me. She's about the healing, and she's so grateful that her voice is being heard. And that's because I was willing. And that's like even something else we can talk about is how many relationships were an opportunity to serve humanity on big or small stages. And you said no.
Yeah.
If you said no, then there's nobody else to pick up that ball. And I just, like I said in the beginning of our conversation, I had no idea how to write a book. I have a way better idea now. I had no idea it would take a year. It's not the writing that takes a year, it's the editing and the layout. And, it's just, oh Lord, it just, like, can we be done yet?
Yes, I know. My book took 2.5 years, so I definitely get it.
Oh my God. Yeah. So anyway, but then the interesting thing is, so a lot of the book was written in my communion with her. But the journey to Grace was actually written in 48 hours, which of course wasn't 48 hours because I actually slept and ate during that time, right? So I went away on retreat and was like, I am going to write this book, sequester myself. And it literally, like, once I was serious with myself and I sat at the keyboard and I'm like, this is dumb. This is not working. And I keep in mind, I wrote the book with like a pen and a notebook. And here I am expecting to dump the book on a keyboard. And I was, well, wait a minute, no. And I took out my phone and I started pacing. At least it was a big house that I was renting, I started pacing and talking out loud. I don't know what I said, if, then, blah, blah. And seriously, and when I left to go on this retreat, I knew that I would be writing like 5 or 6 sections, but I had no idea on what. I seriously had no idea. And by the end of the 2 days, I had, I think, 6 sections. It's like, wow.
Hmm.
So I write, if I'm not channeling Grace longhand, I write by pacing
Hmm.
and
Okay.
dictating
Mhm.
and then transcribing. It's like, wow, this is real. That was how I wrote the book, you
Yeah.
know?
So how can people find your book? Where is your book?
My book is wherever books are sold. Of course, Amazon, the typical online places. I do have a website, uh, livingwithgracethebook.com. So that is where you can go. And that, if you go there, then there's links to like wherever your favorite place is to buy. If you want to buy at BAM or Amazon or
Okay.
Barnes and Noble or whatever.
And then do you also work with people?
I do work with people.
And how do
Yes.
people work with you?
They come willing to change.
Okay. And do they reach you also through that website?
No, they would actually reach me at harmonichwholeness.com. We can put all the links underneath
Yes, for sure.
your video. My website, harmonichwholeness.com. There's a contact area there. What I did want to mention is that Grace and I have Grace Notes. So I have another website. I don't want to overwhelm anybody, but so we'll put that in there too, how to get the Grace Notes. They're free.
Mhm.
And they're literally a note. You know how some notes are 4 paragraphs? Yeah, that's not my style. It's a note of inspiration, of nourishment, of grace, where that comes into your inbox every few days, and just a way to have some, like to brighten your morning.
That sounds
You know?
like fun.
So yeah, so that's a little something. And if you are listening to this before the book launches on the 29th of October. I have some pre-launch packages where there's a lot of free bonuses in there. And for like bundle, if you buy more than one book, and I will uh, also, well, I have to actually put it online yet. I just created it in the last few days, but I'll get that online for you. And that would be another way for you to experience working with Grace and I. Because in the bundles, there is a live interactive, I can't remember what I called it now. But there's a live call where you can be involved and ask questions and things like that. So that's another way you can kind of well, if you haven't gotten to know me yet, we should keep talking. But it's kind of fun when you can ask questions too.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you and Grace.
Well, thank you.
And, everybody, remember that you can live the life you want, regardless of your story. So get
Yes.
out there and do it. And we'll catch you again really soon. Take care. Thank you for listening to Stories in Your Hands. Please rate, review, and subscribe to show your support. This podcast is sponsored by loveinyourhands.com, the place to find the secret ingredients to your soulmate. Start your free Soulmate Connection membership today using the most innovative and accurate algorithm to match you to potential long-lasting love, all at loveinyourhands.com.